Okay. I'm going to be responding slash reacting to some of my notes that I've taken over the years. Back in June of 2019, I wrote the following after watching a John MacArthur sermon. And around this time, I had my first actual conversion experience, where I kind of came to see, oh, Jesus is real. All of this is real. It's not just metaphorical. It's not just a good story. It's not just a parable. Um, and I you know, submitted my life to Christ essentially right around this time. In this note, I write about God's will. So from this MacArthur sermon, I wrote, God's will is that you be saved through Jesus. God's will is that you be spirit filled, controlled by the Holy Spirit. His will is that you be sanctified, separated from sexual sin, that you be submissive to God and to one another. God's will is that you suffer for doing what is right, and God's will is that you be thankful. Okay, this is. Uh, I read this over last night, and I'm looking at it now. I gotta talk on this one about God's will is that you suffer for doing what is right. Now, I don't know if he actually said this in his sermon, or if that was just my takeaway. Um, Hard to say without reviewing the actual content again, but I'm not going to do all that. I definitely disagree with that today. God's will is that we suffer for doing what is right. Um, no, I would say God's will is that we do what is right, and if we suffer as a result, that may be part of it, right? God's will is that we be loving toward one another, and if we suffer as a result, that we rely on Him to help us get through that suffering. Um, and just taking the case of love and suffering, what parent or what spouse or any kind of intimate relationship or family relationship that you have your loved one, and in loving them, that can bring about suffering, whether it's you see them doing things they shouldn't be doing, or um, you know you lose a loved one, what have you. There's so many scenarios where love costs something. True love costs something, and oftentimes it comes along with some suffering. God's will is that we be sanctified, separate from sexual sin, that we be submissive to God and to one another. This is where my apologetic brain comes in. And I would love to have asked John MacArthur when he was preaching this, may God rest his soul, if we were to be sanctified, separate from sexual sin, I would ask him, is that not a work? Does that not take some human action? And I only bring this up because I have seen him make this distinction, when he was preaching on faith versus works. The simple gospel of just trust Jesus versus the works based salvation of the Catholics or whatever group, right? How is one to be submissive to God and to one another without any human action, without any work on their part, without any doing on their own? Now, a caveat on their own, because we read in St. John's Gospel account, Christ tells us, I am the vine, you are the branches. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So, yes, as Christians, we recognize, hopefully, it's all grace. It's all grace. But to make these hard and fast distinctions of faith versus works, and I'm just trusting Jesus, you're trying to earn your salvation or whatever. I don't see how MacArthur preached on it and how I just received it. I was completely new Christian when I heard this sermon, but God's will is that you be submissive to God and to one another. God's will is that you be sanctified, separated from sexual sin. That involves more than just trusting Jesus, right? Actions have to come into play. Plans might need to be made. I know that. I've struggled with pornography for most of my life. Finally coming across more and more healing, but it's slow. It's hard to come by, and it has taken real strategizing and real effort on my part. Yes, by the grace of God. Yes, through relying on Him and seeking His will and seeking His strength. Yes, of course. But I'm also doing things too, right? And I'm doing certain things. I'm not doing other things, right? In order to what? Try to live a more holy life, right? Not that I'm holy yet, but that's the hope for us all, right? Because as MacArthur says, God's will is that we be sanctified. And in particular, as he points out, separated from sexual sin. Okay, so that's all. Those are my thoughts for now on MacArthur's sermon that I watched back in June 2019 on God's will. Peace.